God speaks through His servant this morning, and let's give God all the glory. Amen.
Good morning. It's good to be here, back in Frankfurt. For those of you who don't know, I grew up here, and in 5th grade, I went to the elementary school in the basement. Is it still in the basement? Okay, yeah. And sorry about that year. I have to apologize. Let's see here. Yeah, it's just been a weird trip coming back and seeing all the stuff I grew up with, and we stayed an extra day this time to stay with my mom and spend time with her. So just memory lane, a lot of nostalgia. But I do. Before I introduce my family, I wanted to say, yeah, I grew up here, and then went to high school and college, Pennsylvania and Ohio, and then decided to go into the military. And I became an Army Ranger. I did that until 2016. When I got out, my life just started to spiral out of control. And in 2020, God radically saved me and changed my life. And then since 2023, the beginning of 2023, we've been missionaries in Thailand and Burma. And so I want to talk to you today about what's going on in Burma and everything and what we were able to do. But yeah, there's a bit of background on me. If you guys want to come up here. I want to introduce you to my family. The last time we came here was about a year and a half ago, and Presley was sitting in the front seat, and Tiffany and Juliet were in the back room because she was crying, and he was suspiciously quiet and sitting there real well behaved, and I'm like, man, this is weird. So we get in the car, and he wouldn't say anything. He was acting real weird, and Tiff was like, are you okay, Presley? Is everything all right? And he goes, I don't ever want to go back to that church again. And I was like, why? What happened? He goes, you guys drank Jesus' blood. So we had a communion class after that. So this is my wife, Tiffany. It says Presley, 6 years old, and Juliet, she just turned 4 yesterday. Yeah. Oh, and we've got some news for you.
Mommy has a baby in her belly.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. Love you guys. All right. Let's see. What time do we got? Okay. I got time up there. So, I want to share one story quickly about Presley when we were in Thailand. I read a book, and if I could recommend it, it is Bodie Balcom's book, Family Shepherds. I strongly recommend any father and mother, Tiffany read it, get that book and read it. It changed the way I view my role as the shepherd of my family and inside of the church, what my role is as well. And it changed my life, and it changed my family's life. It changed our daily schedule. In the mornings, Tiffany goes to FBR, which is the Free Burma Rangers, the organization we work with. She does her morning workout. I do mine in the evening, so I get the kids all morning to myself before I get to go into work. And so this book made me realize how important that time is. And so we have devotion time together, which looks like Bible reading, catechism memorization, family prayer, and then family worship, where we turn on kids' worship songs and we dance to Jesus for 30 minutes to an hour. It's awesome. I love those mornings with the kids, and they've learned to love it too. And it's exciting when you're reading the Bible to them and you finish and they beg you to keep going. That's the best. So one day afterwards, Presley came to me and he said, Dad, I went in the nook and I prayed to Jesus. And I'm like, awesome, what'd you pray about? And he said, I prayed that Jesus would take the bad Presley out of me and put the Holy Spirit inside of me. And so, I was so happy, but careful at the same time. And so we prayed together and we read scripture together, and I wanted to make sure he understood what he was saying. And so, as best a 6-year-old can, he placed his faith fully in Christ. And he knows that the only way to be saved is through Jesus. And so he wanted to get baptized. And we told him we'll let you get baptized when we go back home, but we're going to give it a couple months. And if mommy and daddy see the fruits of the Spirit in your life, then you can get baptized. And it wasn't 2 or 3 weeks later we were doing a baptism out in this pond in Thailand, and he was like, I want to get baptized. So we did it. And so that is one story that he makes sure I tell every time I'm at a church. He says, baptism story, yeah. So thank you. So today I want to give you a bird's eye view of what we're doing. And if I had 4 or 5 full services, I couldn't share everything. But I want to give you a picture of what we're doing, share with you what's happening in Burma, why does it matter, and what we did while we were there, and then what I'm asking you to do. So, how many of you have heard of Burma? Myanmar? It's the same country. So, maybe a little more than half. 75 years of consecutive civil war has left Burma one of the poorest countries in the world, and that is the longest civil war in the world. Successive military dictatorships, meaning one right after the next, have killed tens of thousands of their own people and displaced millions in resistance areas in the name of ethnic cleansing. The military junta has perpetrated this genocide through significant acts of violence and injustice across most all of Burma's states and regions. And these involve laying of landmines, airstrikes, artillery and mortar bombardment, forced slave labor, and ground troops burning down villages and churches while committing mass murder and a bunch of other things that I won't say because there are kids in here. The Free Burma Rangers, the organization that we work for, is an organization that was formed in 1997, and they're comprised of foreigners and foreign missionaries, local Thai and Burmese people providing direct relief to the people most affected by the war. FBR trains, supplies, and coordinates these teams of people inside of Burma to provide medical care, food, shelter, clothing, educational resources, leadership training, support programs, and financial aid. And this all goes to the people most affected by the genocide that is taking place right now. And this gives us missionaries a unique and strategic opportunity to share the gospel to some of the most oppressed people in the world and to those who in many cases have never heard of Jesus. So I want to share a little bit with you about what my role was at FBR. We were there for 13 months, and the whole time I was there, I was the supply leader. And so all of the 45-plus ethnic teams we have in Burma and in other countries will reach out to the supply team, reach out to me. And with the missions that they have going on, they have tons of supply requests that go into those. And that could be supplies for their team, for the mission, supplies for the refugees they plan on seeing, and lots of medical supplies just from being on the front line. And so they email me, and me and my team, we go out, we procure all these supplies, we pack them in rice sacks, we waterproof them, and we drive them in trucks up to the border. It's about a 4-hour drive to the border, and we take 2 or 3 trucks at a time, 2 or 3 times a week. And while we're there, we pick up patients coming across the border that don't have any medical care, and we keep them at our clinics in Chiang Mai and our churches, where our patient care team takes care of them round the clock. Before I came back to America, I left the supply position, and when I go back, I will now be the resource coordinator inside the chaplain department, and I'll be a missions chaplain as well. In Thailand, some of the things we get to do on that side of the border are a lot of the things we get to do. We get to bring Tiff and the kids a lot of times on these trips too. But we visit villages that don't have running water or electricity, and we install lots and lots of solar and lots of water purification systems, which some of you may have seen. There's the 2- and 4-barrel systems with, you fill them up with rocks and sand and charcoal, and this gives them the opportunity to drink clean water free of bacteria and pesticides and heavy metals as well. Some of the stuff that we got to do as a family, we're on the Thai side of the border. Tiff and the kids don't go into Burma, where there's a war happening. They stay on the Thai side, but there's still a lot of ways we can help the people of Burma from that side of the border. And one of the things they would do a lot are what we call GLCs, which are good life clubs. You can think of them as like VBSs, and like a day thing or a weekend thing where you have a VBS for kids or whatever. And we'll go to local orphanages and hostels near the border. Most of the orphans have lost their parents due to the war, and they'll send them over and they'll have a little orphanage for kids in the war on the Thailand side. Thailand doesn't do a whole lot for Burma and the Burmese. They have a few huge refugee camps, but this is where those kids will stay. And as a family, we get to go and do the GLCs and skits and stories and songs and coloring and games and everything you can think of. And they get to learn English from those things. The kids get to play a lot. It's a lot of fun. In fact, it's so much fun that Presley and I would do David and Goliath skits, and that was working out really well until Presley's Muay Thai training started to kick in, and it didn't work out. We had a really bad incident one night. Let me just say I'm surprised that Tiffany is pregnant because I had to reevaluate. I brought up Muay Thai. We actually do train Muay Thai at a Muay Thai gym, and the reason we do that is because that is our ticket to staying in Thailand. It's very expensive to stay in Thailand, and unless you're a teacher or learning the language, that's about the only other way you can possibly stay there for more than 2 or 3 months at a time. So we train in a gym, and that is every time we do that, we get to stay for a year-long visa with monthly check-ins and things like that. Something else we get to do on Saturdays we did for about 8 to 9 months until my schedule wouldn't allow it, but we want to continue doing this when we go back, are teaching English to these 5 boys that stayed in an orphanage. And by an orphanage, I mean they don't get 3 meals a day. They have like 1 pair of clothes that they wear. They've got no blankets. They've got terrible, terrible living conditions. But we go, we teach English to them on Saturdays, and the kids have a friendship with them now. They get to have a lot of fun, and that's something we really love doing. And because of the support of many people back home in the church, we had the opportunity to take them out for Christmas. And so I remember I called Bob Winters at my church. I'm like, hey, these boys don't have parents. Who knows if they've ever celebrated Christmas in their lives? And even if they do, they're not getting presents. They're not getting presents. And I just want to be able to do something for them. He's like, how much do you need? What do you want to do? So we took them to the movies for the first time ever. They each got a large popcorn, candy, a large drink. We went to KFC beforehand, and I've never seen people eat that much food in my life. We went to the arcade, and we took Presley and Juliet. We take them on everything we do. Took them to the arcade, then we went to a skateboard shop and got them skateboards and soccer balls for Christmas. And so just like something as simple as $500 can go and make someone's whole. I mean, I have, a handful of memories from my childhood, and they're usually the memories that the parents would be like, that's what you remember? That's the thing? But there are memories where you go to the movies for the first time and you do something like that, and it sticks with you forever. And I like to think that's one of those days that's going to stick with them forever. So it's just one of the things we get to do as a family. We also do Friday night Bible studies at the local Burmese church, where I get to share the gospel with most people who are there. It's anywhere from 20 to 30 people, and 90% of the people there are the refugees and the patients that we've brought over from Thailand or from Burma and we're working on. Something else that we will get to do as a family, I'm hoping once a month. But we're raising money right now for a vehicle. So we have a car about the size of a coffee table, maybe a little smaller, and the truck that we would need to get there costs about $15,000. And these are trips, especially now that I'm the chaplain. I get to write up these trips and lead these trips where we get to go to refugee camps and anything that's on the Thai side of the border. With families and things like that. Now, when you go on these trips, if you can't bring your personal vehicle, that's fine. FDR is funding and you're using their trucks, but that means you're not going to have room for your family in most cases. And so what we want is we want to start scheduling those more often, and I want to bring my family on every single one of these trips where we go to the refugee camps. Now, this one specifically that I went to had over 50,000 people in less than a 2-mile radius inside of the camp. The living conditions are horrible. The only reason they're there is because there's people hunting them in their country. Otherwise, they love the jungle like we love our couches and refrigerators. And so it's really not a good place for them to be. But it's been there for 33 years. Most of the people who were born there in the past 33 years have never left. 2-mile radius. But crazy enough, they actually have a Bible school in this refugee camp on the border, literally less than a mile from the border of Burma and Thailand. There's a Bible college, and it's an old Baptist college that came from Adoniram Judson's ministry and from his time there. And there's a lot of Baptist stuff there because of that. And they sing a lot of old hymns, and it was really amazing. And we went to church on Sunday. There were 400 people dressed up. And I was like, wow, this is crazy to have this many Christians in this camp. And they're like, oh, these are just the Bible college students. And it kind of blew my mind. And they told me that they had 75 students graduating that year, or it was actually that week. It was their graduation week. 75 of them were graduating, who were, over half of them were sneaking out of the camp, graduating as missionaries to go back into their home country for the first time. And they've never left the camp. So, pretty crazy things. And we got to bring them 600 Bibles that were donated from a local Christian bookstore, solar, writing material and utensils and things like that for the college. And so there's just a lot of ways we get to show up and be helpful. And these are some of the things that we get to do. And these are the refugee camps specifically are where I've noticed we have a lot of impact there. We can actually help a lot of people. And it's a place where the kids can really help as well. I mean, just to have your kids be able to play with these other foreign kids and to laugh and have fun, that's priceless to them. And so that's a huge ministry too, bringing them along. I want to talk about the two separate occasions I went into Burma. First, I want to say that right before coming back, I did get my, if some of you are on my newsletter, you might have seen this. I did get my free fall skydiving license. The reason we did that is because FBR just purchased a helicopter, and it's on its way to Thailand right now. And a lot of us in this organization are former, Navy SEALs and Army Rangers and Special Forces and things like that. And the guy who started FBR, he was Special Forces, he was a Ranger, and that's why it's called Free Burma Rangers. And so what he wanted to do is he wanted most of the guys with military backgrounds, or at least guys who used to jump before, to get their free fall and halo license so that we can start jumping into areas where we would have never been able to reach before, to help people we would have never been able to help before. And so these are some of the things, and that costs a lot of money to get that license, but now we're licensed. And if we're able to help one person, then that money was worth it. And so these are some of the things we get to do and be a part of. My first time into Burma was during a ranger mission. Now, something we do is we hold these big ranger schools and ranger training camps. And the one we have in Burma is 3 months long. And I went there, and I can tell you there are aspects of it that are absolutely way harder than anything I went through in ranger selection in the Army. And you're in the jungle, you have no resources, and you're just doing this school, and it's terrible. And but it was awesome. And we get to teach them things like rappelling, swimming, land navigation, how to use communications equipment, reconnaissance, medical care. For the first time in 27 years, we have a chaplain school there now. This will be our first year here in the coming months doing that, and it's very effective. And what we're doing is we're training these people who are walking weeks. Some cases they're walking months to get there, train, walk months back to their home state, home region, and they join whatever other Free Burma Ranger teams are there or local. And some of them have to leave their state because there might not be one in northern Thailand. And they stay down here, and it's almost like they're living on deployment. There are many people I worked with who said they haven't seen their family in a year and a half, and they're only 50 miles away. But 50 miles in Burma is weeks. And so weeks of travel, and that's if you know people and, have the right caravan and things like that. So we train these teams to all go back, and then what they do is they attach to local resistance companies and resistance fighters and local militias who are fighting against the Burma army who are committing this genocide. And so they'll go attach to them, and they'll figure out where all the refugees are, and they'll serve the refugees for a week or two, and then when all the fighting starts happening, they will attach to the resistance as their medical support group. And so when someone goes down, they pick them up. That way, the people who are fighting don't have to worry about doing the medical stuff. We build a CCP for them. We bring them back to the CCP. We work on them. And that's ideally mainly what we're for, is for medical purposes while we're there. And then, obviously, spiritual purposes as well. And so, when I went on my real mission, frontline mission, I was the acting chaplain. And so, everywhere we went, I just noticed that there's hearts that are soft towards the gospel, softer than they are here in America. The genocide has softened the hearts of people in Burma, whereas prosperity has often hardened the hearts of people here in America. So you're just really surprised when you get there to start preaching the gospel and to see how they react and how they understand it and process it. It's a unique experience to be a part of. But yeah, so what we do, like we went in and we will go to these villages and we'll ask them, where's the refugees? And they might say, oh, there's 100 over here, there's 100 at the end of this river, and there's 200 up in the cave. So we'll send out all of our people to those people, and they'll tell them, meet us here at this location tomorrow. They'll come meet us, and all of the supplies we have for our mission, we'll give them food, communications devices and equipment like solar-powered. We have solar-powered audio Bibles, which is a huge part of our ministry there. And we do dental care. We have blankets, hammocks, rope, knives. Anything you can think of, really, that's useful there, we provide for them. And then when there's fighting, we're up in the fighting as well as the medical support, but mainly there's not as much fighting as you would think. There is all over Burma, but chances that you'll be there on that day are often rare. You might be a part of one or two battles where you're just at a CCP doing medical all day on people who are dying. And so, but when the fighting's not happening, there are lulls. Our primary objectives are the refugees, which are called IDPs, internally displaced peoples. And we spend a lot of time with them. And we hold those DLCs for them. So we give them all these supplies at the end of the day. We do, most of the time, they're dental clinics. We do this for 10, 12 hours. But our primary focus is to share the gospel with these people. So we'll show up, we'll do some skits, we'll do funny introductions, and then we get into the Bible and who Jesus is, and we share the gospel with them. And one situation was pretty awesome because I'm preaching the gospel to these kids. I'm using the colors of their shirt, like, red for Jesus' blood. If you have a red shirt, stand up, and just getting them involved. But there was this lady during this one time that was sitting in there amongst all the kids, which they usually didn't do. And she was just so focused and engaged. And there was just something almost supernatural there that I felt while I was speaking. But after it was all done, I was so tired, and I knew I wanted to go talk to her. But I was just so tired that I said, okay, 15, 20 minutes I will, but I'm going to go sit down in the shade, and then I'll go see if I can find her. Well, 20 minutes goes by, I go looking for her, and I can't find her anywhere. And I'm like, man, I'm a horrible missionary. What am I doing? This is not the kind of story that people want to hear about home. It's like, I had a chance to go witness and speak to her. And anyway, 2 hours went by, I couldn't find her. And someone comes to me, my translator, and he's like, they're here, the lady in the red dress, she wants to speak to you, she's looking for you. And she went an hour away to go get her husband and bring him back. And she came to me and she was like, can you tell my husband about Jesus, about that story? So I interviewed them for about 30 minutes and then shared the gospel with him and her again. And at the end, I asked her, it got real quiet, and we were sitting there, and I asked her, and this is all through a translator, of course, I asked her what she thought of Jesus and the story that I told her, and she said, I and my 4 kids will now believe that Jesus is God and will worship him and him alone from now on. And they're very animistic there, so they believe that there's spirits in the trees and the rocks and everything has a spirit. And so that's a huge thing for her to say. As soon as she said that, her husband got up and walked away. And so, which you'll see that kind of thing there. And it's understandable, to be honest. There was another guy who, this is an interesting story. So this was about 3 weeks of working with this guy. And he is a journalist. He wasn't always a journalist. He supported the Burma army in the city, which is where they got most of their support. But when the coup happened in 2021 and they started shooting all the peaceful protesters, they lost all their support, and ever since have been actually really losing this war. And so he's one of those guys that was on the resistance, and so he was wanted. And so they said if he returned home, they would kill him and his family. And so he's in the jungle, just floating, going from company to company, writing up stories from refugees, trying to get people out in the world to hear and to do something about it. His name's Yaza. And one day I was giving a devotion before our mission. And I shared a story about forgiveness and the importance of forgiveness and the practical and spiritual implications of something like forgiveness. And I told him a story about how I was in Malaysia and we were doing a border crossing trip for my family. And it's every single month, before we got on that Muay Thai visa, every single month we had to leave the country and come back into it because of the visa situation. And it's very, very stressful on those trips. And we had only been there probably 6 months. And I thought to myself, it got to the point where if something goes wrong on this trip, we might be going back to America to raise money again and try to do this again. But everything turned out good. But at one point I was so stressed out and hot that when Presley and Juliet started screaming and they weren't listening, and then Tiff started saying something to me and I was just overwhelmed. And so I snapped and I yelled at the kids and I spoke very harshly to Tiff in front of the kids. And that threw everything off in my family. That threw everything off. It was not your normal, oh, I'm sorry, I should have said that or should have done that. It was pretty serious. And we got to the house in Thailand, and I'd been so convicted, I finally just sat them down in the living room on the couch, and I said, Daddy is so sorry. And I apologized to Tiff, and I told Presley and Juliet that Daddy sinned against Mom. I sinned against them. I sinned against God. Daddy was wrong. I need to repent. I have to ask forgiveness from Mommy, from them, from God. Do it all in front of them. And there's practical implications to this, right? So if Presley sees me treat his mom like that, and I don't acknowledge that was wrong, I don't acknowledge that I was wrong, if he doesn't see her forgive me, they think about the stuff this is creating in their psyche, and he's going to treat her like that. He's going to treat his sister like that, and God forbid he's going to treat another woman like that someday, another man's daughter. God forbid my daughter find a man who treats her like that. So there's practical reasons why you want to do that. There's spiritual too, though, and this is where the devil kind of fought me until I felt like God gave me this. And I was just like, I'm sold out to this idea of repenting and asking for forgiveness as the father of the family. That doesn't mean I have to be a pushover or, a feminine little, coward. But when I'm wrong, I need to be able to admit when I'm wrong. and the devil will lie to you and say you look weak and things like that. Trust me. But you heard Presley's testimony, but especially when this was happening, it was true for Juliet. One day they're going to have to make a decision, a life-changing decision, where their whole entire life will change, and they're going to have to submit their life to Christ, and he's going to have to ask Jesus and God for forgiveness. And if his dad never does that, never asks for forgiveness, is never wrong, how much less likely would it be that they would be willing to do that? So I want them primed and ready for repentance, I could care less about all the other stuff. So anyway, I shared the story with them where forgiveness is a little bit more foreign in their culture. And there was a video that right in the middle of me finishing up, Yaza walks over in the middle of everyone, shoves a video on my face in the jungle. And he's like, how can we forgive this? And my translator translated. It was a video of the Burma army the day before, less than 24 hours, where they had chained up these two men. And he made me watch the whole video. He chained up these two men, dragged them through the street, threw them over a tree, and they started a good old-fashioned bonfire, put it that way. And so he shows me this, and he's screaming at me that I have to watch it. And I watch it, and you're just kind of sitting there, and you're like, man, I knew I wasn't qualified for this, but I'm really not qualified for this. And they're telling you, you're a white man, you can go home to your rich cars and your rich houses, and you don't understand. Who are you to tell me who to forgive and how to forgive and why to forgive? Well, man, thank God I have Jesus, otherwise he's totally right, otherwise he's so right. So anyway, for the next 3 weeks, every single night, Yaza comes to my hammock, is waking me up, and we've got a mission at 3, 4 in the morning, and he wants to talk till 2, and he's driving me crazy, and 3 weeks go by, and it was one of the last nights, where actually, before I get to that, he comes up to me one night, after this devotion, a couple nights after, and he said to my translator, he wakes me up, and he goes, "Son, I have to talk to you." He goes, "I'm so mad at your God right now." And I was like, "Okay, why?" And he said, "Because you told me about forgiveness and how you can be sorry." And now listen, their culture is very similar to Middle Eastern culture, how we understand it, where just you can never imagine a father stooping so low shamefully to admit he's wrong to his kids, but to also ask forgiveness for his kids. It would never ever happen. And so this is something that really goes against everything he knows. And he says, I've been away from my family for 6 months, and I have no way to contact them and tell them that I'm sorry and that I love them. And he said, when I was leaving my house to go on this deployment, I was screaming at my wife, calling her names, screaming at the kids. And so I felt really bad for him, to be honest with you. And I did not know what to say because he asked me if I would pray to Jesus and ask Jesus to go to his house for him and tell his kids, which I believe he could do in a way, right? Sure, but it's just really sad, especially talking to them, and they don't have the same, I have the opportunity, I have the privilege to still go home to my wife. I knew I was going home to her in 2 weeks, and my kids, and he did it. And I was missing my kids, I was crying in my hammock at night, missing them. It was a bad ordeal. But a few weeks go by, and God brings a translator over to my hammock. And before he did, I was telling my 2 other missionary friends, I'm like, hey, listen, I know I've been the chaplain on this mission, but I need sleep tonight. And when Yaza comes over here, I'm telling him, you can go over to Walker and John's hammock, and they'll be up with you all night. Get your Bibles out, get ready to answer any questions. And as I'm telling them this, Yaza comes up, and he brings his translator, and the translator goes, hey, Thra, Yaza has a question for you. And I said, okay, Yaza, I'll answer one question, and then you're going to go hang out with Walker and John for the rest of the night, and they'll answer any questions you got. but I'm going to sleep. And he's like, okay. He's like, but first I want to tell you that because of you, I believe that Jesus is God. And as soon as he said that, my buddy snapped their neck over and looked at me. And needless to say, I talked to Yaza for the next 4 hours. But that was a really special moment. And, a lot of these people that I have, I'm going to tell one more personal story. Many of these people, they're all Buddhists in most cases. And maybe not in every situation you would do this, but on this mission specifically, a lot of my interactions had to do with Buddha and Muhammad and these people that are very real to them. They're just as real because Buddha was real, right? And so I tell them, essentially, they'll ask me about Buddha most of the time. Well, what about Buddha? Why can't we just say, because a lot of times, many of them will say, I believe in Jesus, and so they throw him in with their many gods that they pray to. And so you got to be careful. You got to be mindful. There are questions you learn to ask to make sure, right, that they get it. Excuse me. Okay. So I want to tell you one more story about Armenia. It's a little 10-year-old boy. And he, along with all of these people, have kind of fit in this bubble for me. And like, for instance, when I would talk about Buddha, I would just say, hey, Buddha was real. We know that. Jesus was real. We know historically that they both were real, but we know historically that only one claims to come back to life. Millions and millions and millions of people claim to have a relationship with him, but not one single Buddhist, every single one of you admit that you can't pray or talk to Buddha. Who's here for you? No one is here for you. You're left with his teachings. That's it. And this really clicks with them, at least on this mission it did. A lot of these conversations I would have. Even with this next boy, Armenia. So we were doing a dental clinic, and there were about 100 to 150 kids singing and dancing and learning English songs and having just the greatest time ever. And there was one kid sitting all by himself looking real sad. I thought maybe he was disabled or something. And eventually his aunt brought him over to us, and she was like, my nephew, he can't speak, and he's dumb, and you need to fix him. So I was like, well, I'm in Burma. Why not give it a shot? Nobody over here can understand English, so I'm like, this might really be one of those moments where God decides to heal somebody. And so I prayed for saving faith, which is, to me, more important than any kind of healing. That's a real healing. But I prayed that God would heal his inability to speak. I really did. And trust me, there's not a problem with faith. If God created the cosmos, he can do anything, right? I mean, there's literally nothing that God can't do, but will he choose to do it? Is this his will? And it wasn't that day. It wasn't. And I, for about 15, 20 minutes, pitched a fit to God. I was so upset. I was so embarrassed. Like, what's going on? And after about 20 minutes, I'm still just sitting there, just so upset with God, so mad. I'm like, man, it would have been an amazing story. All these people would have seen that Jesus is real, and they would have all believed. There have been 200 Christians running around here. I'm trying to convince God why I think we should have done it. And I felt like God wanted me to go back to Armenia, and I was like, no, please, no, it was so embarrassing. But I did, and I grabbed a translator, and we did like some speech therapy exercises, so I just got him to start making vowel sounds and try to make different sounds with his lips and things, and his mom or his aunt the whole time was just slapping him upside the head every time he couldn't do it, and I felt so bad. But he started to have fun with it, and he started to say these certain letters that I was saying, and it was really amazing, actually. And it's not that he was speaking or something happened where he was getting healed. I think this is just, I think maybe he could start to speak, but there's no training. He's a refugee, literally on the run. All the people he was with are living on a riverbed right now with they're living, the only way they're supported when we're not there giving them stuff are local farms and people, villages who are sharing in their crops, which just is, I mean, you might get this much rice in one day. That would be, you're lucky if you get something like that. And this kid's parents were killed in the war as well. So my heart just went out to him. So I felt so bad for him. His parents, real aggressive with him. And but he started to have fun, and then he looks at his aunt, and he said, I'm really sad, and I'm really lonely, and nobody loves me. And she told my translator, he wants you to tell him that. And so I just shared the gospel with him. I was just like, this is it. I'm going to just share the gospel, tell him about Jesus. So I told him all about Jesus and shared the gospel with him. And the way he was acting and the noises he was making was like, this was probably the best news he'd ever gotten. Like, no one had ever done anything for this kid, outside of just bringing him along. This kid has nothing. And stories to them, this is another thing that's very interesting too. When you're there, like when we do those Friday night Bible studies, they can't stand the New Testament. The New Testament is like, it gives me a headache, that's what they say. Because it's all like, moral stuff and things you have to think through. They want stories. They love the Old Testament. And I'm sure you've probably been in, so I'm sure Kenya's probably a lot like that. But yeah, they love the Old Testament. They love stories. So the gospel is a fascinating story to them, and somehow they're connected to it. It's really weird, especially for a 10-year-old kid like this who can't speak. And so we keep playing a little bit. We're kind of joking around, and I'm trying to lighten the mood up, we're trying to make him laugh. And he looked real confused after I told him about Jesus, and he just kind of looked like he was, thinking about it. And then he looked at his mom or his aunt, and he signaled to her, and he was like, how can Jesus hear me if I can't talk? Nobody can understand me. And so I just told him, Jesus can hear your thoughts, literally, and he can speak to you in your heart, whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking, at any moment of the day, night or day, he will hear you. He is right here with you. And he started making noises and all, where you just knew it was the best news he's ever gotten. And then he's all happy, he's giddy, he won't even pay attention to me. And then he starts getting tears in his eyes, and he looks real sad. He looks at his aunt, and he said to her, when will Jesus leave me? And he signaled to her, and she told my translator. And so I got to tell this kid that Jesus is the good shepherd, and that his goodness and mercy follows us all the days of our lives, and we will dwell in his house forever. And you get to share and tell someone about Jesus in this way. It's just powerful. It's powerful. And I was really sad to see him go, and I thought about him like crazy. And Presley gave me this little baby Yoda toy to sleep with and to have while I was in Burma, to remember him and to think about him. And so I gave him that little toy, which was just, come on, it's like $1 million over there. And so it was cool. But thinking about that afterwards, I feel like God was just saying to me, you thought the biggest miracle I could do that day was to heal him, when in fact, the biggest miracle was me not healing him. Because if you remember, he stopped our little game to let me know he had no friends, and he's all alone, and no one loves him. And that right there is a part of the puzzle. He has a need for Jesus. This is where we differ from people like them. In America, it's actually more dangerous to not be in need of him or feel like you're in need of him. And so imagine if he would have healed his voice, probably would have been pandemonium. They probably would have threw him on his shoulders and carried him out and went down the river. Who knows if I'd ever seen him again. And there's a good chance had he got his voice, he would have never heard the gospel. I'd have never got to that point. And maybe he'd have had his voice, but he'd have lost his soul. And if there's one thing I know, it's that Amelia does not have his voice today, but I do believe that on that day he gave everything in Christ. And I do believe that one day I will see Amelia in heaven. And I like to think that Amelia, that Jesus is his friend. And that he finally does have someone he can talk to. And I hope he talks to him more. I hope he's talking his ear off. I like to think he talks to him more than I do. And I'm also just very thankful to Jesus that when there's people you can do nothing for and your heart breaks, he can be there for them. And so I'm thankful to him for that today. The last day that we were there, there were 500 people, refugees, staying at a monastery, and they had sent a bunch of people over to us in the morning to let us sleep in this field in the jungle. And they came to us and they said, hey, and they had heard about the woman whose husband left, and they had heard about what we were doing. And so the monks had sent people to our camp, and they said, hey, you guys can come over today. Everything's still good to go, but whatever you do not bring up Jesus. And so the ex-Navy SEAL, my buddy, he looked at me and he's like, it's your choice. And I said, well, we're talking about Jesus, I don't know what to say. And he's like, okay, if you want supplies, and you want medical care, and you want food. And I think that was honestly a bluff because we're gonna serve these people. But he's like, if you guys want all that, then you gotta let us talk about Jesus. And they were like, okay, all right, you can talk about it. They said, just do not talk about Buddha. I'm like, okay, we'll talk about Buddha. And I'm going to be honest with you. I've waited, ever since the moment I got saved, I've waited for that moment my whole life. Every time you read about Peter denying Christ, or Thomas doubting, or Jonah running away, we truly like to see ourselves, we're like, man, God, I would have never done that. I always would have done that. I'm always the bad guy in every story in the Bible. Wherever this bad guy is probably me. Okay? And that's essentially what I was doing, is I was literally shaking. My hands were shaking, my boots were shaking. I was so scared. And I think you're not just scared that they might throw rocks at you or that you'll offend them, but you're scared too of all these other missionaries that are here. Some of them aren't Christian. Some of the people that work for our organization are not Christian. They might be Muslim or atheist or humanitarian workers. But there are many Christians even who would say, listen, what's more loving is to respect their wishes. And what's more loving is to not force your religion down their throat. And that sounds about right, but you're missing a biblical worldview. And so with a biblical worldview, I don't see it the same way as you do. Their life can't get much more worse for them than it already is. And so it's not going to make it too much. If all this is just a random story, then it's not going to negatively impact them too much. And if it is true, it's the greatest story ever told, and it's the one thing that they need in this life. So you're sitting there, and you know this, but you're still shaking. You're still doubting yourself. You're still scared and wondering what to do, wondering what is the most loving thing to do. I mean, it's crazy to think that you get put in a situation to even contemplate if doing something else is better than sharing the gospel. But you find yourself in those situations. And by the end of the service, usually we would average 20 to 50 audio Bibles that we'd give away at the end of each of these GLCs. This day we gave every single one that we had away. It was over 150, almost 200. And when I told them that I had the Word of God, the Bible, in audio form, I went to grab it, and the people were like stampeding the kids that were in the front. And when they surrounded me and they just started ripping the Bible, they ripped the Ziploc bag out of my hand and Bibles were flying everywhere. And I was so happy that I couldn't believe it. I went, got the other bag, came over, they ripped it out again, Bibles were flying. And so it was an amazing experience. It turned out to be really well. And all of the monks who were there, it was about 12 or 15 of them, sat and listened to the whole gospel presentation, which normally they won't do if they're there. And so, let's see here. So, I'm actually thankful that in these stories that I choose to tell at these churches, I'm kind of like the antagonist in the story. Because I remember before I became a missionary, I was sitting in a church service at Eastlake in Virginia, my home church. And there was this guy who came in on a Wednesday night, raised like 30 grand, and told this story about how he was a missionary in Afghanistan, and there was this girl, this bomb went off, and this building fell on her, and he grabbed her, and her leg was all mangled, and he pulled her out on the stage, and we adopted her, and I'm like, oh my goodness, dude, this guy's crazy. And I just remember thinking, I'll never have the education, the resources, the work ethic, the discipline to do something like that guy does for God. I'll never, it won't be me. And you know, here I am, back from Thailand and Burma, and my family didn't fall apart, thank God. And, you know, safe and sound, and it's just kind of a disbelief, but I say this because the last thing I want anyone to be is discouraged. I want you to be able to look at me and say, if that guy can do it, I know I can do it. And the thing is, not to sound like that cliche missionary that comes back and it's like, the mission field is right outside those doors, but that statement is so true. That statement is so true. And so, you know, it's not until you go to Burma and you go to Thailand, you're doing these things where you realize it is literally no more special than what we're doing here in Frankfort, Indiana, or Moneta, Virginia. It is literally the same thing. I'm like on the phone with my cousins who are pastoring churches. They're like, man, Brian, it's so boring here. I want to do something big like you. And I'm like, dude, if only you knew, we're doing the exact same thing. And there's no, in fact, I kind of feel bad because I'm going to Burma because there's, you know, people who need help. There's people who need help everywhere. And I'm like, man, maybe that would have saved me money for a ticket if I had known that the mission field was just right outside the front doors. But that's where God has called me, and I'm happy to be there. But it's weird that it's not until I went there where I realized what was, you know, and so there's more going on in Burma, and things are bad. But I honestly think that the spiritual war on the earth is worse in the Western world than it is in Asia, in Burma. It feels darker there. There's not a lot of churches like this. There's not a lot of Christians, but people are open to the gospel. And people here are just a lot of times closed off. And then as Christians, I think we can feel defeated and up against the world. And so I just say, all of this stuff, I'm just dumb enough to say yes to God. All of this stuff, I never planned. I had no idea how we were going to raise the money. I had no idea what raising money was or how it looked or how to do it right. Still pretty sure I'm doing it wrong. But all you have to do is say yes to God. To say, I don't even want to do it. But physically I don't want to. But I want to in my heart and my soul. The Holy Spirit's putting this desire to do the right thing. And I have no idea how to make it happen. And those are the conversations that start something. And so, you know, all of you, I see all of you probably the same way you're seeing me as a missionary. It's like, I'm hired now to go to Burma and do what I was supposed to be doing while I was working at Coke, off work at Coke. You're just like, hey, we're paying you to be a Christian 100% of the time now. It's just weird. So anyway, I just hope that you can see my flaws and my mistakes, even as a missionary. You know, I've been extremely lazy in those stories, not wanting to go back and preach because the sun's too hot. mistakes that I've made in front of my wife and children. And a lot of times doing that kind of work, I wake up and I would rather not. I just would wake up and rather not. But it's about, there's a little mess there. Sorry about that. You feel a little coffee, sis? It's okay. But anyway, I just want to encourage you and say that it doesn't matter what town you're in, what church you go to, what job you have, the mission field truly is right outside those church doors. And anybody can do it. I'm uneducated, I'm unqualified, I'm definitely unfit for the job. I'm a total fool, but I'm a fool for Christ. And so, as long as you're a fool for Christ, He's got your back. So anyway, thank you so much for having us here and my family, and your support. And last year, your support, it's gone a long way. And so, Presley and Juliet were handing out those prayer cards earlier, but a lot of you came in after that. So if you didn't get a prayer card, Presley and Juliet will get you hooked up with here in a few minutes. So, yeah, thank you so much.